Hello Steelers, and welcome to this review of Undaunted Battle of Britain. This has just recently been released by Osprey Games. Currently retails for about £40 on their website. You can have a look around and probably find it cheaper elsewhere, like it's Amazon for example. So it's a relatively cheap game, to be perfectly honest, for the amount of stuff that you get in it. You get, let me just show you, you've basically got a plastic holder here for all the pieces, all these map pieces as well, lots of tiles here that you can see. These are all hex tiles. You've also got loads of other bits and pieces, 2 decks of cards, so these are for the RAF in red here, and then for the Luftwaffe here in black. And obviously, given the name of the game, this is a game about the Battle of Britain during the summer of 1940, when the British RAF faced up against the wrath of the Luftwaffe just after the Battle of France. Now, it was a pivotal moment, obviously, in British history and also in aviation history as well. It's probably one of the most famous and well-known aerial combats that ever took place. I mean, there were much bigger ones later on in the war, but the Battle of Britain in particular, you know, it's kind of got a bit of a place in Britain's heart, if nothing else. So I guess it's a perfect choice for a new game of Undaunted, part of the Undaunted series, which already includes Normandy, which was the first one, North Africa, the second one, the reinforcements, which added more to both of those, and then also the Stalingrad campaign system as well. This kind of goes back to the earlier versions of the Normandy and the North Africa one, in that there is a campaign in it, but it is only really sequential. You just play through the scenarios and just add up who's won at the end of it, and that's kind of like your campaign. But it does, in roundabout ways, follow the actual events of the Battle of Britain, starting with almost at the very end of the Battle of France and going into the Battle of Britain itself, up until the big bomber raids towards the end of the war. It plays very similar to the other Undaunted games, so if you played any of the other Undaunted games, I'm going to talk about that in a second anyway, but if you played any of the other ones, you'll pick this up pretty quickly. There's one or two things in this that are slightly different to the previous games, and I'll get to those in a second when I talk to them, but it's very much a card-driven game, and it's a board game, and it is very much based on deck building, so it is a deck building game. Now, if you don't know what a deck building game means, is basically you are playing with cards. So here are some of the cards, for example. These are the individual aircraft. These ones in particular are the G2 Bolt and Paul Defiant cards here. You have cards for each of the different aircraft, which are represented by these tokens here. You can replace these with 1/300th aircraft or 1/600th aircraft if you have them. It is played differently to the other Undaunted games in that it's on a hex, because that's largely because of the manoeuvrability of the aircraft, and we'll get to that in a second. But with card building, you basically start your game with a small deck of cards. It's generally one of each of the individuals who are on the table, so each of the individual aircraft, and then also some of these comms cards as well, and also a squadron's comms card as well. You also have these things called discord cards as well. You have a couple of these in your deck when you start, and this is basically your starting deck for the game. However, you also have what's called the supply, which is generally more aircraft you can add in, or more characters of the same kind of aircraft you can add in. And in each turn you will play 3 cards, or you will play 1 card for initiative. Whoever wins initiative takes the initiative for that turn. Then they will play up to 3 cards in that they have in their hand. So you have these different areas. So you have your hand, you have your supply over here, and then you will have a discard pile and also a deck as well, which you will be drawing from, which you will have down here. And the way it works is, as I say, because it's a deck builder, you are literally adding to your deck as you can, depending on the cards that you play. The squadron commanders cards, so the section comms, for example, and also the squadron comms, they will allow you to add more of the cards from your supply into your deck, which in turns will also give you more and more choices, because you're going to have more things coming through and cycling through your deck as you're playing them. So it's quite a simple way of playing. I think the first game there was a deck builder was called Dominion. It's been around for a long time now, and a lot of people have played lots of, used that mechanism quite a lot in the last, I'd say probably getting on for 20 years or so now at this point. But it's a really nice smooth mechanism. It adds a lot of friction to a game which you wouldn't otherwise have, because you can't always do everything you want to do. You can only play with the cards that you'd be dealt at that time, and that then transfers onto actions on the board itself. So let me just give you some examples of the kind of thing you can do when you play a card. So let's say, for example, we've got red one here, which is a BF 109E, E1. So this is represented by one of the 109s here, somewhere underneath tiny, I think, at this point. There's number 2, but similar thing, you can kind of tell. These have, so when you draw your card, you are able to either move and then also maneuver or attack. And it tells you on the card what you can do with these. When you play one of these cards, either combat cards, you have combat cards and comms cards. So it's about the comms cards a little. But the combat cards, when you play these, you have to take at least one move. So this is the perpetual motion of an aircraft. So when an aircraft is flying, it's always going to be moving. So you always have to do at least one move. You can then choose to either do another one of the actions on here. So you can either maneuver or attack. Maneuvering is just moving, pointing to a different hex face, basically, and you can only do that once per every time you turn, every time you move. So for example, here we have maneuver 2. So in this example, your Messerschmitt could move forward 1, then maneuver to turn to another hex face, then move again, then maneuver again. So you're kind of going around in a circle a bit there. You can also attack, and again we have 2 numbers here. This refers to the number of D10 that you're going to roll, and you have to get over the basically the score that you need for the aircraft you're attacking, which is their defense score. So in this case, for example, this Hurricane 1 has a defense score of 5. So if you're firing at that, it's a 5. You also then add the difference in hexes between your attacking plane and the plane you're attacking. It has 2 scores, simply because when you attack a plane from behind, there's a lot more chance of you shooting it down. This is what the airmen at the time were trying to do, is get on the tail of the enemy. So if you are under 3 hexes behind the aircraft, you use the larger number. If you're coming in from the front or on the side, then you use the lower number. And this is just the number of dice you roll, and you have to get over that defense score. Very simple. If you do actually hit them, they then have to remove a corresponding card for that aircraft. So that's Y1, so a Hurricane here. So if it's in their hand, they will remove it from their hand, meaning they can't use it anymore. If it is not in their hand, they will then check their discard pile, and if not, then they check their deck. If it isn't in there, then the plane has been shot down and it's removed from the board. Very simple, really nice, smooth way of doing combat. Also, in other Undaunted games, there was no upper limit to the defense dice. So even if it went to 10, you could still hit somebody on 10. On this one, there is a cap. If it goes above 10, you can't fire at them. So basically, it means you can't be at one end of the board and the firing at something over here, because that's going to be over 10 hexes away, and it's just going to be impossible to hit. So you have to be quite close in the first place to actually do any damage, because these are all starting around about 5, a defense value of 5. The Bolton Paul Defiance has a defense value of 4, so it's obviously easier to hit because it's a slower moving aircraft. So this kind of stuff is all abstracted into that combat system, really, for this. That's the basics of the rules. It's very simple. The other thing that happens, though, is what's different to the Normandy, North Africa and Stalingrad is actually being in and out of comms. If 2 aircraft of the same section, because the aircraft are actually split into sections, generally 2 in per section, if the aircraft are more than 2 hexes away from one another, they are then out of comms. And if you play a card that has the little comms symbol on it, next to it here, you will then also take what is called a discord card. which are these things. So this is like cloud cover. This is the pilots not knowing where they are, not knowing you know, what's happening around them. And these basically, they don't do anything apart from just block up your hand. So when you draw your 3 cards to play in your turn, if you have any discard cards in them, it basically means you can't do anything with them. There are ways of getting rid of those, and that is through things like squadron comms, using the command, sorry, not the command, the coordinates activation. This can also happen as well on the section comms, but that card, the discard card, has to be in your hand to get rid of it, and also you have to be within comms to be able to do that as well. So this is you kind of forming back up into your pairs or into your Vix or whatever, and then you then draw another card as well just to replace the card you've got rid of. But it's basically you're recycling that again, recycling the bad cards that are coming in, trying to shove them out of your deck as they come up as much as you can. So these are some of the nicer, some of the bits that are slightly different to what you would expect in the previous Undaunted games. And as I've also said, you've always got that perpetual movement of the aircraft as well. You don't have to play any of these combat cards, so you don't have to move the aircraft, but obviously that puts you at a disadvantage. You'd want to be moving to get in on the enemy. And if you do activate them in any way, then you will also have to, you'll have to move them as well as part of it. Now, one thing I think people are probably going to ask is there any altitude? And the answer to that, the very simple answer to that, is no, there isn't. So this is very much a 2D game. Lots of aerial games are 3D. Now, you could argue that this has all just been abstracted away, and it all comes down to altitude advantage, for example, or you know, being lower or being higher, is just abstracted into the cards that you draw from your deck. To me, it doesn't bother me at all. But I'm fairly sure there probably are some people out there that think, oh, you know, an aircraft game should have altitude. I understand the reason why Osprey probably haven't done it is because there is a little bit more bookkeeping when it comes to using altitude. And also you probably have to provide some more tokens to show what altitude you're on. You're then starting to block the table up as well with tokens. And also, you know, there's extra rules and things in it. If you want to use altitude, I came up with a very simple system. Use a small d6, that shows you what altitude band you're on, and you just add the altitude bands for going up, you know, when you're firing at somebody, you just add those extra altitude bands depending on where you are. And also, if you use a manoeuvre, you can climb 1 altitude band or dive 2. There you go. I've solved the altitude issue for you right there. But that's it, you know, it's a simple add if you really want it. And to be honest, this game doesn't really need it at all. So there are other aspects to it as well. Quickly dive into here. I mean, obviously I've got the fighters set up here, so I've got the Hurricanes, the Bolton Pole Defiance, and also the Messerschmitts early on. But there are Spitfires, there's Heinkel bombers, there's Messerschmitt 110s, all kinds of things. You've also got as well here ship tiles as well, which are part of the canal attack of the early part of the Battle of Britain. You've also got aerial balloons, which basically block spaces off, sorry, within the actual the hex map as well. So you have to go around them. And also there are clouds as well. There's also AA guns as well, which not only are targets but are also defence attacks for the British on the ground. And you also have clouds as well, which block line of sight, making it more difficult to shoot. And also, I think if you end up in a cloud, you have to take another discard card as well, so it just makes it more difficult for you to do bits and pieces. So that's really the essence of the game itself. And as a game, I've always really enjoyed the Undaunted games. So you know, you're going to get a slightly biased review here, really. I mean, I've always enjoyed them. They're really good. They're really well thought out. They are board games at the end of the day. If you're looking for simulation, if you're looking for, you know, an actual war game simulation, then this is probably not for you. If you're looking for something that's full of friction and fun and is a really easy way to carry a game down to the local club, then this is it. This is the one for you, I think. You know, it's a really nice introduction to the Battle of Britain itself. I think it's a really it's an interesting system that is used in here. Some really nice mechanics that anybody can pick up very quickly. I've introduced my friends to Undaunted, not to Battle of Britain, but to Undaunted Normandy and Stalingrad, and they picked it up incredibly quickly. It's really been, you know, literally by the end of the game, they want another one because they know it. There are 11 scenarios included in this. So this is a scenario book. As I said, I mentioned that it's a campaign in as much as that you play through the scenarios and just add up who's won and who hasn't. A lot of people always ask about replayability for these things, and yes, there's 11 actual games in it, which is, you know, doesn't sound like a lot. However, you can swap over. Both take a side each. That's doubling it up to 22 games. You can make up your own scenarios quite easily just by using some of these as a base, and then, you know, just adding your own cards in and just making the table your own. Basically, very simple to do. Really, it doesn't take a genius to set up a game of this. And what I would say though is, although yes, you know, the early games are quite basic in this, but that's because they're introductory games, and what they do is they will slowly take you through the various rules until you're halfway through the scenarios. You're really playing with everything, and it's the same system that they did with the earlier Undaunted games, in that it kind of leads you by the hand very much through into the game. And I think there is definitely nothing wrong with that. I think it's a really nice way of just introducing new players to the game. It's a lovely way of just showing you, you know, how all the different aspects and the different mechanics will go as you are playing it. I've been waiting for a long time for this, and I'm certainly not disappointed when it's arrived. It looks good. It's very well produced, as you would expect from Osprey Games. You know, the attention to detail in it is fantastic as well. It's nice to see some representation as well on the cover, so any young kids who are seeing this, you know, of ethnic backgrounds might be interested in playing it, you know, because they see their representation on the cover. Brilliant, you know, happy with that kind of thing. And I think, as I say, just in general, these games are always good fun. If you want something to introduce somebody to wargaming with, then I think you couldn't go far wrong with these. I'm interested to see where they're going to go next with the Undaunted series. Now that they've started doing these as aircraft, I mean, I wonder if, you know, is there an Undaunted First World War aerial game brewing? That would certainly be high on my list of purchases. But I think, you know, the way that they've got these pretty nice simple mechanics, and they're able just to extrapolate them into all these other different areas and ways of playing, and the fact that they're now, you know, they're using aircraft, there are mechanics for using aircraft. I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes next. You know, if you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments. What do you think is coming next? But yeah, I'd definitely like, if either of the guys, David Thompson or Trevor Benjamin, are watching this, then I'd be more than happy to see a First World War aerial dogfight game, because I think that would work perfectly well with these mechanics. You could quite easily do it yourself. So I suppose that wraps up. There's not much else to say really. That's it in a nutshell. It's a very simple but very fun game, something that you can come back to, something that you can play over and over again, and I think, you know, it rewards play, because the fact that every time you play it, your cards are going to be different. You're always shuffling new cards in, so you're always going to get a different game, even if you're playing the same scenario. And I think that is the important thing. It's very well balanced. I've even played the first introductory game a couple of times. I played it solo, but both times it's been a completely different outcome. And I think, you know, if you can do that with a game, then I think you're already halfway there, and it just shows that it is balanced. Alright, I'll leave it to that. I'll say thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this review. This is a great game, as I keep saying. Go out and check it out. I'll put a link for an Amazon affiliate link in the description down below, so if you want to use that, might give me a little bit of money back. But anyway, just check this out, and also check out the other Undaunted games out there as well. I am planning on doing some after action reports of these, so I will do at some point. I just don't know when, but keep an eye out for those on the channel, and you'll see them in the future. And thanks for watching.